just when you thought it was safe to go onto iTunes. This is Next Level Guy, the only website that makes self-development as fun as going to the movies. It's time to take the red pill and escape the Matrix.
What's happening, guys? It's time for another episode of the Next Level Guy Show podcast with your favourite tutor, Ian Dawson Mackay. Next Level Guy is a go-to men's interview, interest and improvement website where I quiz the experts to find out the hacks, tips, methods and protocols that you can implement in your own life to take it to the next level and live happier, healthier, wealthier, sexier and so much more. Today's guest is Forrest Galante. Forrest is an avid adventurer, nature lover and star of Discovery Channel's Extinct or Alive and Naked and Afraid. Forrest pushes the limits of human and animal interactions and his own mental and physical endurance in extreme challenges worldwide by attempting to find animals that are considered extinct but may still be around. He also spends a lot of time doing conservation work where he looks to help endangered species. His work recently caused a stir when he was part of the team that discovered a female Fernandina Island tortoise, a species that hasn't been seen for over 100 years. He's a passionate freediver, conservationist, naturalist and biologist. He loves to travel and create incredibly unique adventures in unspoiled habitats around the world. In this interview, we discuss his story, conservation, extinction, how we can help change the plight of endangered animals, and how the hope of finding previously thought extinct animals can inspire the next generation of young people to help wildlife and our planet in the future, and so much more. And now, let's get to the interview. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. You're a really hard guest to prepare for because you had so many questions coming out, so many amazing topics. It was hard to sort of dial down. And you're somebody who's got a love and passion for animals like me, so I'm really excited. But for these kind of 5 or 6 people in the world who don't know who you are, how would you, how would you explain who you are and what you did? Because you've got a pretty amazing job.
Yeah, sure thing. First of all, I think there's probably a couple more than 5 or 6 who don't know who I am. But yeah, my name is Forrest Galante. I'm a wildlife biologist. I specialize in animals that are on the true edge of extinction. So much so that I actually generally tend to specialize in looking for animals that have been presumed extinct or declared extinct that I believe could still be out there. So it's a highly specialized field of biology. It's all field work. It's kind of the wild, wild west of adventure biology, and that's my specialty.
And so you're originally from Zimbabwe. Now, when you were growing up, would you attribute the sort of love for animals from your parents' business, or were you kind of into animals as a kid anyway? Was it a sort of natural thing?
Oh, I mean, it's both, like I was always obsessed with wildlife for literally as long as I can remember, but growing up in Zimbabwe, having family that owned safari businesses and being constantly on safari and living on a farm, you're surrounded by it. So I don't know which came first with regards to the chicken or the egg, you know what I mean? It's like I was always surrounded by it and always in love with it. But, plenty of other kids grow up in Zimbabwe and other wild places and don't go into wildlife. My sister is one of them. She loves the outdoors, but she's certainly no scientist or passionate about wildlife. So it's not, it was a chosen passion. It wasn't just something I was plunged into.
So how did you find sort of growing up in Zimbabwe? Because I come from a sort of rural place myself, and we grew up working with sheep and cattle, and you knew people who were like slaughtering cows, like to sell the meat and stuff like that. So you kind of knew where your food was coming from. You saw animals, you worked with them daily, and that was that the same kind of upbringing that you had, the kind of looking after animals and physically exploring and. Like, were you an active kid?
Of course. Again, apologies about the peacock. He's a real pain. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I grew up on a 200-acre farm on the outskirts of the capital city of Harare, and it was, we never had a computer when I was a child. TV was something that maybe we would watch once a week. It just wasn't the kind of childhood that most kids have today. So it was always outdoors. It was very, very rugged. And of course, being on a farm like yourself, I knew exactly where our food came from. We grew it, whether it was crops or cattle or sheep. And, along with that lifestyle comes hand raising lots of wildlife and domestic life. There was a long, I don't want to bore anybody with a long story, but I fell off my motorcycle and got a huge cut in my leg that required 13 stitches. And that happened as I was going towards my mom to tell her, hey, I need to go to the hospital and get stitches. We found out that our favorite cow was giving birth, and my mom was like, look, there's two things we can do. We can stay here and take care of the calf that's coming out because it's not going to be a clean birth because she's had health problems, or we can rush you to the hospital and get the stitches. It's one or the other. And so, of course, me being me at about 8 years old, I was like, no, we got to stay here. We got to help out with the cow. And so was born this little calf. And then I went to the hospital and got stitches. And that calf's name became Stitches. And then we raised Stitches in the house, And that's just one of a zillion examples. I had pet vervet monkeys. We had serval cats from plowing the fields. I had tons of snakes, aquariums, like you name it. Growing up on a farm, you are surrounded and hands-on with animal life like that constantly. So yeah, I knew exactly where all those things came from and absolutely loved it.
I love that kind of life. It's something I could only dream about. I mean, we had like sort of the typical Highland animals, but I was always enthralled in when you watch films and documentaries and things, and all these kind of different things in Japan, and it's in these hidden away remote Himalayan caves you can find X, Y, Z. And I can see the passion in my my nephew. He just turned 7 and he loves animals. So why do you think some kids just aren't into animals? I mean, I just don't get that kind of upbringing. Nature's such an amazing thing, but do you think technology's ruined mankind in a way? Have we actually started depending on it now and needing the screen rather than the joys that nature provides?
I feel like there's a two-part answer to that. First of all, to answer your question, the first part of the question was why do some kids not love wildlife? And to me, the answer is simply exposure. If you live in a city and you never take your kids to a park and you never let them see animals and you never experience how wonderful even just sitting in a city park and watching squirrels run around and play with each other is, then you're never going to have that intrigue, that passion, and that curiosity. So for me, I think it's not like you have to grow up on a farm in Zimbabwe to care about wildlife. I work with a team of incredible people, some of whom come from big cities, urban environments, others who come from, suburbia, and it doesn't make a difference. They're all people whose parents showed them what wildlife was at a young age and got them intrigued. Even if that meant sitting them down in front of the TV and showing them the Discovery Channel, it got them into it. And I think that intrigue is what leads to people caring about wildlife. The second part of your question is, has technology played a role on that? And my answer is absolutely. So much so that a lot of people don't know this, but I'm actually a producer. I'm currently working on a show that is about disconnecting from technology and reconnecting with our primitive roots because we've become so disconnected from kind of human, natural human understanding. And what I mean by that is we live in a time and age where technology is we're a single-use society. Everything's at the touch of our fingertips. If something happens, if something goes wrong, we can solve it by clicking a button on our phone or clicking a button on our computer. And in my opinion, to some degree, that is creating a generation of very useless people. They're people that just use their phone for things. And if their phone's out of battery or they don't have a computer in front of them, they're not competent. They don't know how to change a tire. They don't know how to build a fire. They don't know where to find water. Obviously, these skills aren't things that you need every single day living in the type of environment that we currently live in. But there's still things that are, I believe important to human nature and instinctual. And I'm not wrong. And the reason I say that is there are, for the first time in history, many very notable, credible scientists coming out saying digital addiction is a real thing and it's creating an incredible problem with depression in our society.
No, I completely agree, and that was some of the area that I would like to cover is that, how you found these different tribes and what the changes in how they behave and act compared to, what we call the civilized world. But no, I 100% agree that we've kind of created a civilization now where you can order food, you can order a date, you can order a taxi online. You barely need to move at all. It is really scary, and it sounds an awesome program to be on. So can we go a little bit about your amazing trips now? How do you go about actually financing this? I heard you mention that you worked with certain universities, but is it a case that you need to wait till Discovery say to you, I want you to work and look into this kind of animal, or do you look and think, okay, I need to go and look at this, so I'll get funding from such and such government body? You know, how do you plan them, prep these? Because they seem such amazing trips, but the cost must be amazing.
So it's a combination of everything you've just said, really, and that's kind of the beauty and also the downfall of my career. So first of all, nobody tells me what to research or what to go after. That's my expertise. So the way that any expedition is founded is, I do hundreds, if not thousands of hours of research on a species and delineate whether or not I believe that it's viable that the animal could still be in that habitat. It comes down to a variety of factors. Is there enough habitat? Is there enough prey or food sources? Are there recent sightings? How credible are those sightings? What is the area? What's the remaining ecology look like? And you add up all of this research, and if basically there's more pros than cons, then I go, okay, here's my plan. I'm going to go and look for this species, right? Let's take the instance of the Fernandina Island tortoise. I'm going to go look for the Fernandina Island tortoise. It's this large volcanic island that very few scientists have ever stepped foot on. It's too difficult for people to get there. The climate and environment is so harsh that human beings can't survive there. There'll never be a lot of footprints there. There's this one animal that was seen 113 years ago. Is it possible that there's another one? Yes, I believe so. And the reasons are X, Y, and Z. Let's go. So once I have that idea, then I start working with organizations. I'm using this one as an example. I'll start working with the Galapagos Conservancy, the Galapagos National Parks, the government of Ecuador. I will then go to Discovery and say, hey, Discovery Channel, Animal Planet, here's an idea. Here's this episode, in your words, that I want to do, which is this expedition to this area to look for this tortoise. Here's the research that supports my hypothesis. Here are the government bodies involved. Will you finance some of it? Will you finance all of it? And sometimes the answer is yes, of course, we'll finance all of it, and other times the answer is, yeah, we'll finance some of it, but, when myself and my team do the numbers, it's like, great, you've offered to finance it, but that doesn't add up to what we need. We need 4 helicopters. You've given us enough for 1 helicopter. And this isn't a dig at Discovery. They have a budget, and they're budgeted to make a TV show. I'm working on a wildlife expedition. So there are 2 things that have to somehow navigate into being one, and then we'll go out and look for sponsorship. We'll go out and look for donations. That's when I'm working with the national parks. They'll say, oh, well, turns out you guys own a helicopter. Do you think that we could actually use that for free? And if we do, if we're successful in our endeavor, obviously, credit will go towards your organization for helping sponsor the helicopter. Or, hey, we need some manpower on the ground, like we need porters to carry all the water because there's no drinkable water on the island. Can the national park supply porters? And we'll cover their tips, but we can't. But we need a boat to get them out there. And it's just and this is a long-winded way of saying it's a crazy collaboration and a crazy amount of moving pieces to try and put the puzzle together. That is one expedition, and that's just I'm giving you all the examples and details on a single expedition. This year alone, I've done 8. So, within the past year, not this calendar year. Within the past year, I've done 8. So it's when I'm not in the field, I'm sitting right where I am right now at my computer working on my next expedition and how to get back into the field.
It sounds an amazing life. I love all that kind of stuff of, like fighting for financial guarantees and prepping for things and, pulling together big projects like that. So how do you balance it with, like, companies who are wanting to do TV episodes with it? Because to you, this is a life passion, this is about the animals, but to them it's about, ratings and getting a TV show. So how do you make sure that you keep the scientific integrity, of it, shall we say, against TV?
That's a great question. And, I don't know. I know a little bit about television, especially more now that I've been doing it for 5 or 6 years. And you hear these things about, reality TV is all fake and documentaries are scripted and blah, 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 blah. I'm 100% sure that some of that is the case. That being said, I couldn't be in a better home. Discovery and Animal Planet allow me all of the freedoms and flexibility to go out and do my expedition and shoot it the way I want and they will film it, and they will edit it, and they will put it on TV. Nothing gets faked, nothing gets forged. Basically, I have this amazing team of about 6 guys that comes with me everywhere I go, and I lead the way. I am a producer because even though I'm not technically a producer, I'm just the one producing the results. Do you know what I mean? I'm the one meeting with people. I'm the one that sets it up. I'm the one that figures out where we're going and how we're doing it. And I basically just have a documentary crew with me that's a fly on the wall. Now, sometimes, one of them will go, hey, man, I missed that when you walked into the door and started that conversation. Do you mind doing that again? And most of the time I'll be like, sure, no, that's not a problem. But if we're in the field and we're working, they know, basically, just follow me and don't say anything. Don't get in my way. Don't say anything. And I'm not being mean towards my crew. They're a wonderful crew, but they are true documentarians. What they do is document what I do on expeditions. And then we dump all that media, we give it to the production company, and they slice it together into an episode that's usually very chronological with what we shot, and then it goes up on Animal Planet. So although I've heard that some people have a ton of difficulty and all the television is scripted and all the television is fake and things have to be redone, and we don't face any of that problem.
Because that's the part I actually loved about the show, was that sort of camaraderie, the emotion that's built between you, especially when you get the footage of the animal, or that you were kind of really pushing each other, and you kind of batted heads at times, but
for sure.
But that's the joy of it. It's like you could see that you were all into that one mission, and that's the great thing about it. So, but how do you go about actually prepping you and your team? Because some of the places you go are so remote that very few people know about it, or how can you risk assessment something that no one else has really been into? How can you can take a medic and maybe some weapons in case there's any charging rhinos or anything like that kind of thing. But how do you actually plan for something that you can't really apprehend what you're going into?
I mean, you said it. You can take a medic, or you can put a rifle on your shoulder or something like that. But ultimately it comes down to prior experience. Can you find someone that's been there that can give you some insight? A lot of the time the answer is no, and then you just have to do your best. That's where, as the expedition leader, it falls on my shoulders to tell my team, hey guys, you need your cameras, you need your water shoes, that kind of stuff. But here's what else we're going to need. This time we're staying in a swamp, not a jungle. So we actually need tented hammocks. We need to be off the ground. In this expedition, we're working below the surface. So you guys need all your dive gear, and here's the dive gear. I'm very, very fortunate because my crew, like I said, it's a very small team. It's the same team consistently. They're all avid outdoorsmen, just as passionate about conservation and wildlife as I am, just from a different field. They like doing it through the lens of a camera, or as a producer. They're not the hands-on one like I am. So we're really a very tight-knit team that all works together. And although I'm the expedition leader, plenty of times I'll get a call from my buddy Mitchell or my buddy Johnny or Mark or whoever it is that's part of the team on the show, going, hey, I was just doing some research, and turns out there's a lot of leeches, so make sure you guys grab leech socks. Okay, cool, thanks, Mark. And everybody goes to Amazon and buys their leech socks. So we're very collaborative. We're very much a team. As you said, one of the things you love about the show is that it's camaraderie, and we're constantly bickering and all that. It's true. When you travel around the world for 8 or 9 months straight with the same 8 group of guys, that's gonna happen. We've screamed at each other, we've been at each other's throats, we've hugged each other in celebration, we've cried about things. I mean, you name it. We are a unit, and we work together. And I'm very lucky because the relationships I have from that show, I can very easily say that those are not just people I work with, but my best friends in the world. And I think that'll happen when you spend most of your time around people. Yeah,
because that's the bits I actually loved, was you could see the genuine relationships. It wasn't let's do this. You see in some places that it's so kind of wooden, but you could see the excitement, the exhaustion, as you've been looking for things, and then your hands were shaking, and people were actually just stunned when they seen the footage. I think it was a tiger, and it was that kind of thing you can't fake. You can't fake that kind of bond that you built. Would you say that's the exciting part for you? The bit of not knowing what you're going into, leading people. Is that what kind of drives you, do you think?
No, what drives me is the conservation message. I would be doing this work whether it was me by myself with a backpack and no money, or it was the way it is now with the big television production and the financing and everything else. It doesn't change. It doesn't change the work I'm doing. What makes the work so valuable, what drives me, is the fact that even today, Ian, I probably received around 100 messages through my social network channels of people going, hey, my son is decided to change his major from economics to conservation. Or, hey, I'm a 45-year-old woman, I've never really worked with wildlife, but I've seen 7 of your shows, and now I'm volunteering at an animal shelter. And the list goes on. It's these people that I feel I'm inspiring by this incredible platform of Discovery and Animal Planet to turn towards conservation. Even those that, it's not like you have to change your life. You don't have to work in an animal shelter or change your major in college. But just when I get a message from someone going, hey, I never knew about thylacine before, and I've just ordered a book on Amazon, and what a fascinating species. Something like that. It just spreads the message, it spreads the understanding, it spreads the conservation, and that's what makes TV all worth it for me. That's what makes having that platform worth it for me. On a personal level, the thrill I get of working with a cobra in the field, or catching a caiman, or climbing a tree and seeing a lemur species that nobody else has seen before. Those kind of things. That's what really pushes me on through this field. When I've got trench foot and the bones are sticking out of my toes, or when the team's down with malaria, or whatever it is. It's those moments of interaction with wildlife that kind of let you see what the planet was like 100 years ago, or let you see something that you feel no other human being has ever seen before. That's what drives me on like a personal level.
I mean, how do you comprehend that? How, like, when you discover those kind of situations, how do you take that in, that, you're possibly the first person to have seen that animal for 100 odd years, or, everybody thought they were dead and extinct, and then you found a living example of it, How do you go in with a mindset of it? Do you look at it as in terms of, yeah, you're really positive, you think you're going to find it, or do you have to keep that controlled and think, okay, we don't know, we'll stay skeptical until we find examples? Which side? Is it your emotions, or is it the scientist side of you that takes over in that kind of situation?
Man, it's such a delicate balance, because if you ask a lot of my real dry sciencey friends and old professors, they'll tell you I'm way too emotional. And if you ask like my wife and my social friends, they'll tell you I'm way too dry and sciencey. So I don't really know which side of it I fall on the line. That being said, I am a scientist, so I always go in as a skeptic. I know that going in, there's a 1 in a million chance of producing results, but that doesn't mean that it's worth giving up on. And here's why I'll say that. No one else is doing it. You know what I mean? No one else is looking for these animals. The entire world has given up on them when that little label of extinction has been placed on them. So if I don't do it, and I'm not saying that I'm the best man for the job, or the most skilled, or the greatest on earth, but if I don't do it, no one's going to do it. And that's what, so I got to do it. Do you know what I mean? I don't have a choice, Ian. Like, I love doing it. I wouldn't want to do anything else, but if I don't do it, no one's going to do it. And yeah, I think that's kind of the way that I go into it. I'm skeptical. I know it's a 1 in a million chance. A perfect example is when they were filming Planet Earth. And don't quote me on this because I don't remember the exact statistics, but it took them something like 6 weeks of sitting in a blind on that mountainside in the Himalayas to get a shot of the snow leopard, right? That's an animal that we know exists. That's an animal that's, yes, it's listed as endangered, but it's not extinct, right? That took them 6 weeks to see it. And that's an animal that's very well known by science. It's very well studied. It's been seen by a zillion people. I'm looking for something way more rare than that, and they had to sit in the snowy mountains for 6 weeks. And, sometimes I only have 3 weeks. So the odds are stacked against me, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to give it my best shot.
It certainly comes across as like that's what you were designed for. I think some people come in and they're just well suited to what they choose as a career. And I can definitely get that from you. Every time I see you and listen to your interviews and stuff like that, there's true passion there. Like that's what, like you said, you'd be doing that if there was no success, if there's no television deals, if there was just you, no crew, you'd be going out and looking up things. So when you do come across, go and look at these kind of animals, how do you make sure that you're not like changing the ecosystem. You're not changing like you're not creating an artificial reaction from anything nearby. How do you make sure, like, with your equipment, is it use of like thermal cameras, like motion sensors and stuff like that? How do you make sure that you get an honest reaction from animals and tracking methods and stuff without interfering with the environment around it, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we don't. I mean, you can't really do that. You can't go into an environment and not impact it. We have a zero trace policy, meaning, of course, we leave nothing behind. We don't leave any plastic. We don't leave any toilet paper. I mean, we leave nothing behind. Zero trace means coming out of there with nothing but footprints behind. That being said, your presence in the environment alone is impacting it. And then that being said, that's not necessarily a negative thing. Just because myself and my crew, a bunch of large mammals, are walking around the Serengeti full of large mammals, doesn't mean that it's negatively impacting the environment. Do you know what I mean? It's we leave no trace, we leave no pollution, we don't burn anything. Obviously we make fires and do little bits of survival to get by, but we always break it up or bury it. We do our very best to leave no trace, but we're not impacting the environment. And then comes the question, how are you balancing that? And you have to think about the greater good here. We're on an expedition to try and prove something's still around, to then conserve it and protect the species, get funding for it and continue the ongoing existence of an animal given up on by the planet. Like, does that not outweigh, having 6 people in a habitat where animals haven't seen people before, or interviewing locals that don't want to talk about it? To me, the answer is yes, a million times out of a million. What we're doing is a much grander scale than the microcosm of impacting, a single snake or a single plant, or off-putting a local villager who doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah, because it's difficult in that scenario of, like, people are used to, like, somebody that lives in such a remote place might be used to a particular animal and just deal with it, kind of, whereas to us it's groundbreaking. It's like, we thought it was extinct. Where, like, how do you deal with, like, the local tribes and like local people to make sure that, like, to build that bond, to get them invested in the project and to help you, and not kind of stonewall you and sort of prevent assistance that maybe could actually help you be successful?
Well, interestingly enough, you find that kind of Westerners are far more standoffish about it than local people. When I'm working on a species in North America, Canada, or Europe, everybody's very weird and standoffish about it. When I roll into the Amazon to a village that's literally never seen white people before, and I say, hey, I'm looking for this crocodilian, they go, oh, cool, come on in, smoke some of this crazy root thing with us, or snort some of this powder, and we'll take you to see it tomorrow. And, it's always a gamble. Like, it's not always going to be the most pleasant interaction, but I've never had a negative one, really and truly. And it just, people are willing to share. When you roll into an environment where it's their expertise, and you go in being honest, being like, hey, I've never been here before, I don't know anything about it, I'm looking for this rare thing, have you ever seen one? And one person goes, yeah, I've seen one, or a couple people go, yeah, I know where they are. They're generally very excited to share with you. And we bring with us candies and gifts and t-shirts and things that we feel are going to be helpful. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, there's very little barrier there, other than the barrier of getting into the locations.
Oh, I love that, because it generally shows that we've, like, in what we call the civilized world, we created these barriers of, like with social media, and we put walls up in front of each other, and we've created, like, rules of engagement where you can see in these sort of places they're just so warm and friendly and open. They don't care about what job you've got, how many followers and likes. They just care about being happy and healthy and loving each other and stuff. And it's almost sad the way we've kind of built up what we call, like, the civilized world. So without this, like, human interactions, would you say that sort of nature would constantly be balancing itself out? That what we're doing by growing and expanding into these different places is screwing up potential, like, disease remedies? Are we changing the way that evolution and natural selection and these sort of things would take place? Are we kind of messing so much with nature that we're screwing up potentially how animals are going to define themselves? And, are we basically killing things a lot sooner than they should? Are we completely tipping the scales so that everything's offset?
No doubt about that. I mean, we are in the 6th great mass extinction event, and we are creating it. Humans are way overpopulated. There's way too many people on this planet for its carrying capacity. And, we're eliminating the resources. It's one thing to have too many people and then manage it, farm sustainably, grow fish, grow food. But, with 8 billion people on this planet, not every one of those 8 billion people can go out and catch fish every day, or there won't be any fish left. That's obviously a micro example. But we're creating extinction at a rate that is just unsustainable, and we are reproducing at a rate that's unsustainable. We have become so good, and this is a very controversial topic, but I'll give you my stance on it, and it's the scientific stance on it, whether you agree with it passionately or not. We've become so good at curing diseases and overcoming physical difficulties that natural selection is no longer allowed to take place. And what I mean by that is, if you're born without legs in the middle of the Sahara, you get eaten. If you're an antelope who's born with a physical disability, you get eaten by a lion, right? That's just what happens. That's natural selection. Obviously, we don't live like that. We were able to cure that, and now you live in a wheelchair and you have a very nice functioning life. And that's great for the individual, but you're talking about messing with evolution and you're talking about changing natural selection. That's exactly what that does. It changes natural selection. That creature, whether it's human, antelope, lion, it doesn't really matter, is now in the ecosystem where in the wild, it would no longer be in the ecosystem. It wouldn't survive.
Well, it's like with pandas, I can't remember who said it, but they were saying, they're really pointless animals compared to other animals. They will not reproduce, that they don't do, they don't give you a cure for this disease, they don't do that. And they were saying that we like them because they're cute, so humans will try to, the conservation to keep them around. And I thought, I could see what he was trying to say, that we, like, as humans, we pick and choose the animals that we want to support and help. And then there's people like you who are, willing to help everything. But, is this our own vanity? The thing, we want the pretty things to, the cute things. And that then causes problems in nature because you're affecting the balance to prey, predator. You're bringing the animals into areas they shouldn't be in because somebody's built a herd of whatever and they've escaped. How do you think we should be looking at these kind of things?
Yeah, I mean that's what's called the God complex, right? Where we feel that we have the ability to pick and choose what should be here and what shouldn't be here, and how we control it. And the reality is we have to do that because it's human nature. And we have to, there's so little wild areas left in parts of the world that we have to manage them. If we didn't, there'd be nothing left at all. So it's a catch-22. Like, you want people to care about conservation. You don't want them to only care about pandas, but you'd rather they care about pandas than nothing at all. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's such a catch-22 that it's like, it's such a weird gray area. It's like, if you tell me you only care about sharks or panda conservation or whatever it is, I'm still going to be stoked that you're a conservationist and you're passionate about a species, but it's still not the right mentality because, just having that one species in the environment, in the ecosystem, doesn't do anything for the greater good. It still leads to collapse. You need a healthy ecosystem for balance, and you need balance in order for the ecosystem to continue and all those species to thrive. So it's a double-edged sword, but, let me say this and be very clear about it here on your podcast. I don't care who you are. If you love wildlife, even if it's just a single animal, even if you just love your dog at home, that's good. You know what I mean? It's better than nothing. Yeah.
So what would you say then if, say you had all of mankind listening and you were allowed to give like a conservation philosophy, what would you be saying to everybody? How can we, regardless of where you live, help out the conservation movement and help animals and the environment? And is it a case of not using as much plastic, or are these the kind of generic things everybody says, or is there a better thing that humans should be doing to not make sure we're not messing up the environment and nature as much as we have been?
So all of those generic statements, use less plastic, don't get a straw, recycle, don't carpool, all those things, they're great, right? Every single one of those is great, and they're there for a reason. There's science to support that. That being said, I think the thing that so often gets overlooked, and the underlying problem, if I had all of humanity listening, regardless of where you live, I would say educate yourself, because that's all it boils down to. If you spend a little bit of time, that same amount of time you'd spend on Facebook or watching TV, just reading a little bit about what you have in your area, what's critically in danger, what needs help, if you give yourself that, it's not like you need to be a scientist or a PhD. You just need to have a basic understanding of the environment in which you live and what things need help and how you can do it. Because there is no one-stop, one fix cures all. It's little things like knowing, hey, I live in Southern California and there's not enough water here, so I shouldn't leave my faucet running while I'm brushing my teeth. Mm-hmm. That makes a huge difference if people just Google that. But most people that live in Southern California live in downtown Los Angeles or San Diego, and they don't even know that there's a water crisis. And, that's a very microcosm example, but it's little things like that that add up to making a big difference, and you have to understand your own environment in order to make those differences. Don't use plastic bags. Don't water your lawn too much, Pull over when there's a turtle on the road and move it to the side of the road. Don't run it over with your car. Those little things add up. People doing little things like that don't actually interfere with their daily life add up to a big change.
Because I love those kind of things. I grew up with that kind of thing. If you've seen a bit of rubbish, you picked it up and put it into a bin. If because we used to have like feed bags for the sheep that sometimes got blown away. Like a neighbour's croft, they would blow into yours, so you pick them up, a bit of twine. You put them in the bin, and it always amazes me that people will throw a cigarette butt down, and they're about 10 yards from a bin, and just that kind of logic it will never ever not annoy me when I see it. But I love the way that you put it as like it's the small things, because people always come up with these big things. Oh, I'm definitely not going to use straws again, and then they start going, oh no, wait, Starbucks are talking about Trump, so oh no, I'm going to start, I'm going to start using a straw again because that'll get against the left side, and it's
exactly, and that's ridiculous. It's like you're not hurting or helping anybody but yourself.
I could never imagine, and mind you, I never thought we'd have a American president who denies climate change and stuff like that. Do you find it difficult to kind of get that message out when you have people sort of higher powers who are kind of lessening the effect of it by, dismissing it?
To be honest, Ian, sometimes it feels like we're regressing into the dark ages when you have people that won't accept science, and it sucks because I alienate my own audience sometimes when I go on. I'll get people to tell me evolution isn't real still, and it's like, it's just mind blowing to me. It's science, or climate change isn't real. To me, it's like it comes back to that education thing, and I know faith and education.
When you have somebody that denies things like that, I think we learned about it in science, about the Galapagos finches, about the different beaks for different types of prey and that. And I still get people who'll say, oh no, it's not real. But you give them that as an example, and they'll turn and tell you about a post they read on Facebook and tell you.
Yeah.
And you're like, really?
It's have you ever heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect? I believe it's what it's called. Have you ever heard of that, Ian?
I've heard the name. I'm trying to remember which one that is.
So the Dunning-Kruger effect, it's rampant on social media, and it's a pity when it comes to wildlife. As what it is it's a field of psychology where people who have a limited understanding or kind of an illusionary superiority of their cognitive ability of talking about things. So what that means basically is, I read it on Facebook, now I'm an expert in it. You know what I mean? And you see this a lot. It's like, well, I saw a thing in the Daily Mail that says crocodiles are going to eat every person on Earth, and now I'm an expert on crocodiles. And that's the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it's tough because, I have zero interest in getting into online battles with people, but I get people who will write on my social media pages and stuff going, oh, evolution isn't real, what you're saying is wrong. God would hate this, or climate change is fake. You shouldn't be talking about it on your show. And it's like, these are statements. These are not people with open minds that are willing to hear about something or discuss it. These are people making a statement based on no knowledge whatsoever. And that is tough to combat.
Well, I hope you're all having as much fun as I did recording this. I really loved doing this one. I couldn't stop smiling all the way through. But I thought now would be a perfect time to take a quick break. I just wanted you to get the affiliate sales pitch that I have to give in every interview. If you go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates, that's www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates, you can go to my affiliate wonderland. If you're on the main menu, you can click affiliate deals in the blue ribbon at the top, or if you're on the post itself, there's a little box that'll take you to the affiliates graphic, and you can go there directly. There are so many special offers, listener exclusive deals, and discount codes available there. There really is something for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're buying for yourself, a special occasion, or for someone else in your life. You can find out whatever you need right there. There's a lot of inspiring companies and interesting products you might not have seen before. There's companies such as Onnit, Amazon, MeUndies, Barbell Apparel, Dollar Shave Club. If you want help with dating, for example, there's the Awesome The Natural, which is a dating product which helps you understand that you're the prize, that you can be the one the girls seek. That's by RSD Max. There's the Alpha Brain by the great people at Onnit. There's so much there. There's tactical gear, there's outdoor equipment, there's gadgets, and there's so much more. There's Barbell Apparel jeans. There's something for everybody there. You might not even know that you wanted it, but you can find it there. If you go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliate, you can get straight there. Please note, I don't receive any information about you or your purchases. You can buy what you want. There's some adult stuff there, there's some stuff there on dating, there's stuff there on self-development, there's stuff there, gadgets and all sorts. All I get is a small commission back from the company for sending you through using my links. As a thank you from the company, you don't pay anything extra, you don't get charged anything extra, and no information is shared to me. All I do is I use that money then to make the podcast better, get a better mic, get a better setup, etc., and get better and bigger guests by advertising, marketing, etc. If you've got the time and you want to say a thank you, I would love if you could leave a comment on the website, if you could leave a review on iTunes, or use one of my affiliate links. I really appreciate taking the time to listen to this waffle. I really appreciate you as a listener, and I really appreciate you taking the time to check out my podcast. And now, let's get back to the interview. So how do you even start that? Is it a case that we need to, put better education out to schools, or is it, that, I just don't get how we can fight that at the moment when so many people are only taking a side or believing something if it's somebody from their side said it. It's something that kind of scares me when I look at some of like Trump's Twitter feeds, and people just believe him just because he won apparently, and right. Then the Democrats come back and they won't believe a single thing that any Republican could say because of X. We don't really have that as much in the UK, where right. I think we're kind of more open to kind of listening to both sides, and if it's a fact, it's a fact. But we still have that right. sort of people who believe no. If religion says it, that means it's true. So how do you even go about getting the next generation to understand conservation, to understand that, we are destroying the planet, and how we can fix it is you're saying small ways, conservation.
First of all, Ian, I'm a lowly biologist, not a philosopher, so I wish I had the answer for you. But, I think you don't have... The cases that I'm just given as people that talk on my social media, and the people that you're talking about that'll retweet a Trump quote because they think that's fact, I don't think that's a majority. I think that's a minority, and those are extremists. Don't get me wrong. There are plenty of closed-minded people, no matter where you live in the world. But I think just being, caring about things doesn't mean you have to be. You can be neutral, or you can be hard left, or hard right, or hard religious, or hard scientist. It doesn't matter. You can still care about something. It doesn't. You can take global warming and religion and evolution out of the equation and still care about, like, the panda, for instance, like we talked about earlier, because it's a great animal and you want to see it exist so your grandkids can see it. You don't have to be an extremist or an exact in the middle to just care about things and make small changes. And I think education, again, is the key. Education in schools, I try and do education on my platform, which is my television shows, and I think just understanding and caring is where it all starts.
So when you do find these kind of animals, what do you do from there on? I mean, I've seen, like, footage of you finding, like, I think it was a footage of, was it a leopard or a jaguar?
Leopard, yeah.
Yeah, sir, leopard. And, how do you then take that and, like, disseminate it out? How do we make that kind of go, well, look, these animals do exist. This is why we should be fighting, because if that's close to extinction now, look at and you teach people a bit about the animal. How do we then take that and say, there we go, we haven't killed it off yet, let's protect it, let's do X, Y, Z to protect it? What can we do from there on once we know they are still there?
Well, on an individual basis, that's very difficult. I go through the rigorous scientific process that helps to remove the animal, that, changes the animal status on the IUCN species list, and then I work with government officials, etc. On an individual basis, how can you, the listener, or how can you, Ian, contribute to the Zanzibar leopard? That's tough. It's not easy, Sure, you could send money somewhere, but you don't really know even how that money's going to get spent. But it's more about the message. You know what I mean? It's like, it's the basic human desire for hope. When you have an animal that we believe we've driven to extinction, we have wiped off of the face of this earth because of negligence, because of hunting, because of pressure, whatever it is, and then you find out that in some tiny pocket of the world, this thing is hanging on by a thread and it's managing, and now with just a little bit of help, we can bring it back. That is a message of hope that is stronger than any story, anything you can read in a book or online, or any YouTube video you can watch. And I think that resonates with people. I think that's why the show is successful and why so many people get behind the expeditions that I do, because each one inspires hope. There's hope that it's still out there when we start the expedition. More times than not, we don't find what we're looking for, but what we do see is all of the incredible things along the way. What is still left in that environment, and what is worth saving and protecting. And it gives us this hopeful message that goes, hey, with a little bit of care and a little bit of love, this can stay here. Yes, we've lost this thing, or yes, this leopard is back from the edge of extinction, but let's just care about it enough to keep this environment as it is and not log it or destroy it or take from it. And I think that resonates really well with people.
Because I think was it Shawshank Redemption when they were talking about, like, how hope can, like, or it might have been Harry Potter actually, but hope can put a light in the darkest of times. And I think that's what you were getting at, was it's amazing how seeing something like that can inspire the next generation or people just now to kind of change their habits because they want to see these beautiful animals thrive in that. But what I think you was reading about, you can't rely on, like, footage, you can't rely on pictures, you have to have genetic materials to prove these animals are, still about, etc. So what do you need to change the index to show that the animal's still existing? What kind of, like, things would it be, like an antler or fur, or do you need, like, DNA evidence, or what sort of things would allow you to prove that animal is still about?
Well, it's up to a committee at the IUCN, who I obviously work quite closely with, and they need undeniable proof. So, undeniable proof is DNA evidence. That can't be tampered with, it can't be changed, it can't be misidentified. That's undeniable. But short of that, say you're going into an environment looking for, let's say you're going looking for a wolf somewhere where wolves haven't been for 200 years. If you get footage of a wolf, odds are it's that wolf. Do you know what I mean? Odds are doesn't necessarily mean it's definitive, but the odds are good, and so that at least sparks interest. So it's tough. I'm not giving you a direct answer because there isn't one. You know, obviously DNA proof is the best, but it's also the hardest to get. How are you going to get DNA proof from a wolf? Well, you either have to find the scat, or you have to somehow collect some fur, or you have to get some blood. And if there's one of them in 100,000 acres, good luck. You know, it's not easy. You might be able to get a bit of footage, and that might help, but it's just, that's the thing. It's such a loose. It's just difficult. It's hard to say that something is definitely there without concrete proof, and concrete proof usually comes in the form of DNA.
Because this is where it was really difficult, like when I was prepping to do this, was it's whatever I kept getting sort of like, oh, I could ask about that, and I was trying to think, like, how do I make this or chronological, and, you know, how to flow this, because I'm an animal lover, and I could go on for days about a particular episode before we even get to the main stuff, you know, and so I'm trying to talk around into the sense of the excitement that's there, you know. It's that kind of thing of, we've screwed up, we've lost this animal, or it's no longer going to be about, and then you go away and go, let's have a look and see, and then you find the animal, and just that basic synopsis, it's amazing when you find it. But when you start thinking about the, you know, what that means for the ecosystem, what that means for like potential offspring and natural selection and all these kind of things, how it's going to change, how can it, you know, change the world, and potential cures for cancer and all these kind of things, it's amazing. And is that what you're sort of proudest of at the moment? I mean, which animal was the one that made it for you? You know, like if you had to pick one kind of particular interaction with an animal, which one would you go for?
Oh man, that's so tough. You know, I feel like in some ways it's like asking a parent to pick their favorite child. You know what I mean? It's like, it's so hard to say. There's so many different expeditions and so many different instances, and you know, some of the wildlife that I've interacted with that's been my absolute favorite hasn't been things that are critically endangered or close to extinction at all, and others, of course, have been. The tortoise, which made headlines around the world, the Fernandina Island tortoise that we found and moved into the breeding facility, that you know, that was at one of my proudest moments of my entire life. You know, everybody, including and I'm reluctant to say this because I don't want to disparage anybody, but including the national parks, who laughed at me and snickered when I said I was going to go and try and find it, and then tried to take credit for the find. You know, they like, everybody said that it wasn't going to happen. You know, oh, you're wasting your time. Don't go look. Don't bother. And then we found it. And like, that's, you know, it just goes to show you, like, not only are people in some instances, these people given up, but they're naysayers and find you laughable for even caring enough to go and look. And then when you can flip that on its head, it's a very good feeling, a very smug, very good feeling. But that, you know, that's in the microcosm. On the big picture, things like the tortoise, and I can't say too much more because I'm not allowed to until they come out on television later this year, but the tortoise is a one that made headlines, so I can talk about that. It's such a big moment for not just me and not just my crew and not just the Galapagos, but for the whole world. You know, the tortoise is the icon of conservation. Lonesome George, the last Pinta Island tortoise, was the poster child of conservation, knowing this animal that can live to be 200 years, and it's 200 years old. It's the last one of its species, and then it dies in 2012, and a mate was never found, and it's tragic. You know, to flip that on its head and go and find this Fernandina Island tortoise, another species that hasn't been seen in a lot longer, again, being the Galapagos tortoise, one of the most unique species on Earth, being the poster child for conservation, like, that's such a big moment for the whole world, and I love that.
I just love the passion. You know, it's pure love for the animals. You can feel it when you talk about it, and I couldn't imagine finding something like that, because that would blow me away. Just to see such natural beauty that we have now, and to see these, and then to think you're actually going and discovering something that maybe this generation of humanity has never seen before. There's probably kids who have grown up that'll never have a chance to see a particular kind of animal because we've hunted them to extinction or we've killed them off, and that's terrifying. That like our great grandkids are going to grow up in a world that they might be amazing on computers, but might never see some of this, because we've destroyed nature, we've destroyed ecosystems. And so what would you say to people who are wanting to, who are thinking of getting into conservation? What kind of tips would you give them to, if they wanted to be like you, to train up, or can somebody have that as a career path, or did you kind of just forge your own? What would a tip?
I definitely forged my own, and so can anyone else, but mine's very unique, and there's lots and lots and lots of fields of conservation. Whether you're hatching sea turtles on a beach in Mexico, or working with elephants in Africa, or just want to be a zoologist who, takes care of things at a zoo, it doesn't really matter. They're all equally important fields. Like you just said, I created my own field in a sense because it was one that didn't exist in the sciences. But that doesn't mean that, you have to do that. And it doesn't mean that you can't do that. If I can do it, anyone can do it. I'm just a kid from Zimbabwe who loved animals, and anyone can do it. But it's just about getting out there. You say, what's the tip? I think for the kind of people that listen to a podcast in the Western world that have somewhat become removed from the outdoors, just get out there. It's not that scary. I find so many people that I talk to that go, oh my God, it's so scary. How do you do that? How do you stay out overnight? How do you live in a jungle for 3 months? You don't have to live in a jungle for 3 months to experience it. Go for a hike, spend a night out in a tent, go sit out in a blind and watch the birds fly in. Just experience it and get out there, and then you'll start to see how magical things are. You'll start to realize what your passion is, whether it is birds or reptiles or fish or mammals. And then just find something that works for you. If you want to be hands-on, if you want to be a zookeeper, start working towards being a zookeeper. Go volunteer at a shelter or go get a zoology degree. If you want to work with elephants in Africa, find one of the great volunteer programs that'll take you to Africa where, even if you're just shoveling elephant poop for a few months, you're still working with elephants, and that'll lead to the next thing. And that's the key. It's just like any other career, really. You just got to kind of pick your direction and go for it and stay committed to it. I had my nose to the ground with this Extinction thing, and I didn't get paid for years. I didn't make any money being a guy who just took his backpack and went into the jungle looking for stuff, but I loved it. It was my passion, and eventually it turned into a career, and I couldn't be more grateful for that.
Because that, to me, sounds amazing. Going in with a backpack, spending a couple of weeks, couple of months, in a jungle, catching and milking snakes, and observing and tagging animals and setting up thermal cameras. That to me is amazing. And I don't know, is it because of my upbringing of working closely with animals that you kind of build a love for it? Or, are things like, when kids are younger, like taking them to petting zoos and things like that, where they're taught about animals, maybe these kind of things would maybe help them because they could see the actual beauty of the animal, whereas most people only see these kind of things on TV or on a dinner plate, unfortunately.
Oh, it makes a huge difference. I mean, think about it. If I flip on my TV and I'm a kid from some inner city, there's no difference in watching Avatar with blue people with, ponytails that connect to dinosaurs run around as there is to watching one of David Attenborough's things. They're just as fantastically produced, they're just as beautiful, and they're just as entertaining as each other. So why have a major passion for wildlife? Why not have a major passion for blue people in Avatar? And I don't mean that to be negative. I mean that you really have to get out there and experience it. You have to get into the field, and you have to see it for yourself, because then it is real. It's not just another picture on your TV screen, and it's not that hard to do. That's the thing. One of the things I hate the most that people say to me is, "Oh, you're so lucky. You can afford to do these things." I'm not lucky, and I couldn't afford to do them, but I figured out a way to do them anyway. When I had literally no money, when I was a refugee from Zimbabwe, It spent $7 total putting together my snorkeling stuff so that I could dive in California and see all the fish offshore. Just find a way to do it. Go to a park, go for a hike, jump in the ocean. It's not scary. Go and experience it. Go to a petting zoo, like you're saying, and just start to see these things and realize they're real physical things that you can see and touch and work with and save, and they're not just a pretty picture on your TV screen like a blue person from Avatar.
I love that. It's sad to think that somebody could sit there and actually compare both of them almost. So, how has it sort of changed you, like seeing these things, working with these tribes? What has it taught you about working with these kind of people? How does it change your view of like the world and mankind in general?
I guess with regards to mankind, the way it's changed my view is people want to help if they understand why. And what I mean by that is, going back to the example I gave earlier in our conversation about, if you go in and say, hey, I'm basically a tourist and I'm looking for this thing that you've seen. Have you ever seen one? And they go, yeah, I'd love to show it to you. They have a passion for sharing something with you that you don't already know or have. And, that can be spread in any direction. Just like I have a passion for sharing my stories with you guys here today, it's the same thing. And I think the big point that I'm trying to get to is that people want to actually help if they're given the opportunity and they're given the understanding, because it feels so good to help. Whether it's saving a bird off your porch or saving a species from extinction, like it feels really good. Like it's human instinct to help things and to nurture them and to protect them and save them, and it feels good to help. It feels way better than it does to kill or to take away. And I think if you're given the opportunity, and the thing that I've learned to answer your question about mankind is that people actually do want to help. They just need to understand why they're helping and what it does.
Definitely, because it's like you're saying, it goes down to like educating people and kind of just understanding that you can make a difference, that you can change things. And I mean, we see tourists all the time taking photos of like Highland cows, and it, to us, it's just another one on the road, is it? But to them, it's amazing. It's like a different. You can see them like it's a different animal. It's a different world to see something so close that looks like a bull up close, and you're just like, oh, it's another one. Right, fair enough.
Right. Well, you're blasé. You're used to it.
You kind of feel like it's a bad thing almost, because you kind of get used to it. It's like you're saying blasé. You kind of just think, oh, well, yeah, fair enough. And I think that's the joy of it, is like seeing people, getting people up close and getting them to teach about animals. So why do you think like things like Nessie and Bigfoot are more popular rather than like the stories of the tortoises? I can't even speak today. Tortoises and like the leopards. Is it that we've created like a story and an identity around these animals compared to?
Absolutely. People get really upset when I say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's like when you read a Harry Potter book. It's a fantastical creature or beast or world that doesn't really exist. And I'm not a naysayer. Proof to me that it does exist. If I get some proof of a Bigfoot, I'll be the first one out there to go look for one, because that is my specialty. But it's not been proven. You know what I mean? They're not real animals, but they are fantastic. And it's just like aliens or anything else. Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster. It's such a fantasy to have these crazy creatures here and living here, and some people get obsessed by it, and I think take it to a whole nother level.
Because it's scary that people will actually believe something a Kardashian says over somebody that's actually got like proof.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's nuts. It's like I said, the world's regressing.
I mean, I could go literally into pages and pages of questions about each individual episode, but I just wanted to give like people listening a kind of overview of the amazing work you do. Like, that you're finding animals that we thought we'd lost to time, and you're showing them like that these things exist and how amazing they are, and you're teaching people about the conservation and the developing of the world and how we're messing it up at the moment. But I mean, can it be saved? Are we at the point now where we've done some serious damage, or can we always come back from it?
We absolutely. It's never too late to try. It's never too late to care. Yes. Have we done serious damage? Absolutely. Have we done irreparable damage? Sure. In some cases. That doesn't mean. I mean, that's what Extinction is. That doesn't mean we give up. You know what I mean? There's a lot of great stuff worth saving and a lot of things worth caring about. And it doesn't take a lot for everybody. It takes a very little amount. It takes a very little amount from each individual to make a huge difference.
Because you've got me all like, this is why I love my podcast, is even if no one else listened to this, I'm like you, I'll be doing this day in, day out anyway because I enjoy it. You know,
right.
And everybody I speak to, I can get something from them and understand it, and even if it changes me, to me that's enough. Maybe not to people who want audiences, but so I know we're pushed for time just now, but what would you want people to take from this as a sort of go-home message? You know, I'd love to have you on again where we can go deeper into things and how you track animals and how you analyse them and all this kind of stuff. But what would you want people to remember and take as a go-home message from this one?
I think with everything we've talked about, it's just, if you listen to this podcast and you're interested in our planet and the incredible creatures that inhabit it and some of those that we've lost, spend 5 minutes Googling what's in your own backyard and what could use help and what little things you can do. Because the information is readily available. It just takes people to consume it. And figure out, is it not using straws? Is it not using plastic bags? Is it volunteering at a local shelter? Just spend 5 minutes kind of learning about what is in your own backyard that would impact your life very, very little to help, and realize that those things add up to making a big difference.
And I've got to ask before my final question, what's your peacock's name?
Blue. He's got a big blue neck, so we named him Blue.
And I always imagine that your kind of house would be filled with exotic animals and, all that kind of stuff. I mean, what kind of pets, I don't know if you call them pets, but what kind of animals do you keep?
My wife did a math problem recently. She's a teacher in her school, and we have 91 rescued animals on our property. Right here in my office, I'm looking at 3 different species of turtle, 2 from Australia, 1 from Africa. I have an African lungfish. Our peacock is running around outside. We have a potbelly pig from Hurricane Katrina. We have a miniature donkey that was a rescue when he lost his mate. We have a miniature horse that was a rescue from an abandoned petting zoo. We have, like I said, peacocks. We have guinea fowl, chickens, turkeys, aquariums, snakes. We've got a pretty good spread.
And do you find that, are they sort of kept from each other, or do they interact in any kind of way? Do you notice any changes in their behaviours when they are allowed to sort of interact with one another?
Well, I mean, the African lungfish doesn't hang out with the peacock very often, but all of the quadrupeds and all of the birds all live in the same area. There's a menagerie where all the birds are, and then a kind of a barn stable area where all the four-leggers are, and they all get let out and roam around the property together every day. And sure, every now and then we have a fight. In fact, our Flemish giant rabbit loves to fight with Blue, our peacock. I think they're just kind of testing each other, but nobody's ever drawn blood or got hurt. But our rabbit will come bombing up the driveway to tackle our peacock, and they will stand off with each other for hours, and it's absolutely hilarious. But for the most part, they all get along great, and it's a very kind of paradisical little place that I live in. I love it.
That sounds the best thing ever. I really want your life. Well, I'll have to have you on again, and we can go deeper. But I just found every time I've seen footage of you, you were such a warm and friendly guy. You were so into the animals, and you're a man after my own heart who just loves animals. And I would love to be able to help and do sort of conservation work further than what I've done, like when I was up north. But how can people keep in touch? How can they find out more, get in touch on social media and that sort of thing?
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I'd love to come back. It's been great chatting with you. I have all the regular social channels, Facebook, Instagram. I have a Twitter, even though I don't think I've checked it in about 2 years. I'm actually really open to people. I try to respond to every single message that people send me, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram. Just search for my name, which is Forrest Galante, Forrest with 2 R's. Galante, and I'll pop up on any of those platforms. And I certainly always love to chat with people that are interested in my field and wildlife and what I do. So by all means, come find me.
Well, it's definitely been a hard interview for me because I struggled to keep on one topic. I kind of bounced around to things I was interested in, so there's so many little nuances and little things I want to go into, so I think you'll be on again and again. But, the floor is open to you. As this is the sort of final question, is there anything you'd like to mention, anything that's coming up, any TV shows, any projects that you're currently doing that you'd like people to be made aware of?
Sure, yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and I think you did a great job, whether it was tough or not. Yeah, I've always got fun stuff on the go. This month, at the end of the month, is Discovery's biggest week, and it's Shark Week. It's where they do an entire week of specialized programming on sharks. I'm very, very fortunate in this fact that I am hosting a special on Wednesday night during Shark Week this year, and it was a month-long expedition that I did throughout the Maldives and Sri Lanka in search of an extinct shark named as the Pondicherry shark. It's a really, really exciting episode, and I'd love it for people to check it out. Shark Week's always fun. It's always very toothy and really exciting, and I hope that people check it out. And then in October, my series, Extinct or Alive, returns to Animal Planet, and the tortoise that we spoke about, the Amazon expedition that we spoke about, Africa, which we spoke about, and about 9 other episodes of really interesting, exciting expeditions will be coming up in October. And, people that like wildlife and have kids and like family-friendly programming and want to go on an adventure from their living room, I hope they check it out.
That sounds awesome. But the more I can promote, the better, because you're doing amazing work. It really is blowing me away, and it's the fact that I can connect with somebody like you and just even help get the message out there and see some amazing stuff, and it blows me away. Just keep doing what you're doing, because you're inspiring the next generation and you're saving things from extinction. You can't get a bigger compliment than that.
That's true. Well, thank you so much, Ian. It's been a real pleasure being on with you today.
That's it for another week. Thanks for listening. Absorb it, practice it, use it. Until next time, keep trying to hit that next level in your life.